welcome. You're watching Ask BQ on Bloomberg Quint Live and I'm Alex Matthew. If you've got questions on equity, then this is the perfect show for you. You can send those queries to us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and WhatsApp. You can also call us on 022-4540-4141 or you can mail us on askbq@bloombergquint.com. Just make sure to add the Ask BQ hashtag. Let's take a quick look at where the markets are currently, and the benchmarks, from what I can see, are as flat can be. Practically no change in the benchmarks. They did flit between gains and losses earlier in the day, but they're currently bang on where they left off yesterday. Let's talk about the broader markets as well, because they're more or less, well, the Nifty small cap is unchanged as well, but the Nifty mid cap is gaining about 0.3%. Both of them have been more or less listless as well in trade. Let's also talk about the market breadth, and that will probably give you an indicator as to where things stand, more or less 1:1 there, advances and declines. So it's telling you that there's no real direction that the markets are taking right now. Let's also talk about the Nifty contributors and see what really is leading to that absolute flat movement. So on the one hand, you have ICICI Bank that is contributing some of the gains. Bharti Airtel, I'll come to that in a bit, also contributing to some of the gains. But on the other side, you have HDFC Bank, which has been doing not too badly for itself in the recent past, and HDFC, the twins, pulling the benchmark lower at the moment. Let's also talk about the Nifty gains and losses, and more or less the same picture as what you will see. Let's pull that up. Bharti Airtel at the top of the gainers, and this is primarily because of the TD SAT ruling that came in that struck down the TRI norms on predatory pricing, found that they were a little opaque, not necessarily giving enough clarity, and what was appearing to favor Reliance Jio. But that's seen as a huge positive, not just for Bharti Airtel, but also for the other telecom player as well. But let's also talk about some of the others. You have a couple of movers. Very recently we got, or rather a couple of hours back, we got information on Fortis that the Supreme Court in fact had struck down, or rather put the sale of Fortis Healthcare to IHH on hold. We're still awaiting clarity on that, and we should get that within the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. We're just waiting on that. Colgate-Palmolive is one other stock that you have to look at in trade today. It's trading higher, close to at least a 52-week high, if I'm not mistaken, up about 1% or so in trade today. You also have Reliance Naval, which reacted quite sharply, up about 14%, and that's primarily because of the Supreme Court ruling that essentially did away with the petitions that recommended a judicial probe into the Rafale deal. That happened not too long back. But with that, let me get our two experts in for the day. It's time to bring them in. Sharmila Joshi, who is an independent investment advisor, and Kunal Rambhia of the Streets are both here to answer your questions this Friday. Welcome to the show, both of you. I do want to start with you, Kunal, since you're here, and we just concluded a hot money special on technicals. Are you spotting any interesting trades today? What are the stocks that you would like to point out to our viewers right off the bat?
So, we just discussed about Titaga Wagon. Now that stock, we know that, there was an announcement and the stock reacted positively yesterday. I'm waiting for the stock to correct to say near 77 mark or 78 mark. This stock is down by around 60% from the year's high. So keeping that in mind and the huge volumes which are getting created on the counter, I'm waiting for the stock to correct near 77.5. That would be the best buying entry. Keep the target of around 90, 95 on cards, because that can be a complete turnaround story.
Okay, fantastic. All right, with that, let's start with some of the queries that we're getting live on Facebook and on YouTube. Also, if you're sending queries in on Twitter, someone will tell me. I have just WhatsApp, YouTube and Facebook open as of now. Let me take the first one. Gopal Dhoot is asking a question about Motherson Sumi. He bought at he's bought 152 shares at 70, if I'm not mistaken. He's asking for well, he thinks it's short term, but it's seemingly quite a long term, 3 to 4 years. And it bodes well for you as an investor if you consider 3 to 4 years as short term. And you're making quite a bit of a gain in the investment that you've made, up about 3% in trade today at 166. What should he do with this? Sharmila, what should he do with this investment? He seems to be making quite a bit of gain on this counter.
Yes, it's a stock I like, and I think, of course, today it's up because of that news flow that they're looking to act an acquisition, and that's really the way Motherson Sumi has grown. They've acquired a lot of companies in Europe and sort of integrated them with their business. The recent hits, of course, on their overall outlook. One was that whole Volkswagen issue that played out, and of late we've had this whole Brexit issue and the concerns about the tariff wars, etc. Getting played out in the stock. But if you are ready to ride this period of uncertainty out, I think it's a good stock to hold because I like the clarity of the management in terms of growing the business, growing their revenue, and their whole approach of having these small acquisitions that sort of add to their profile. And they are the preferred, sort of OEM for a lot of automakers, international companies. So I think that bodes really well for them. So from me, it's a hold.
Okay, let's take another question. This one from Amol Dongre. He's asking which stocks in the healthcare industry are good buys for the long term, say 2 to 3 years, and specifically he's asking if Thyrocare Technologies is one of them. We've just got an update, Sharmila, on Fortis that I mentioned a little earlier. Not seemingly the best development for the counter, down about 7%, but it still seems to have recovered from the lows of the day. I think it was down over 10%. It's now about 7.7% lower. We're still waiting for a little clarity. But how would you rate the space as a whole, and what companies would you pick?
Yes, so of course I think that coming to like being really stock specific, Thyrocare is in a very different business than like a Fortis Health or any of the hospital businesses. So I think both sides of the business are fairly attractive. If you want a pathology sort of a lab and the whole collection, so you have that SRL play, you have that Dr. Path Labs and your Thyrocare. I do like Thyrocare as a stock, so I think that's definitely something that can be bought on declines. And within the hospital space in the healthcare business, I think Apollo Hospitals would be my preferred pick because they also have that pharmacy vertical that sort of plays to their advantage and all that. So I would really steer clear of the Fortis Healthcares of the world, but I think definitely you can go with some of the stocks within that space. And I agree that this is sort of an upcoming and a good space to be in.
Okay. Do you also have a view on Techno Electric? We've got a specific question from Mayank Saraf, and he's talking about, and I'll have to verify this, I don't have the access to that right now, but he's talking about a buyback at 410 and promoters, the fact that they won't participate. Do you have a view on that as of now?
Well, honestly, I too have heard of the buyback, but I don't know the exact price. So I think I will sort of reserve my comment on that.
Okay. In the meanwhile, let me get a quick technical check on Techno Electric. What's the view here?
The stock is clearly in downtrend, undoubtedly. Stock made a low of around 220, and since couple of days, the stock is in upper circuit. So if you're already long on the counter, I would advise you to keep the stop loss of 240 and hold the counter. I think the stock is heading for around 295, 300 kind of mark.
All right. Let's get another question in. Let's pull up M&M Financial Services and see where it's at right now. We've got a question from Anirudh Asava, and he's asking for the targets that you would recommend or the levels that you would recommend and the time frame that you would also recommend.
So on the daily chart, the stock is successfully created the formation of cup and handle, what we call it in technicals. The neckline of that is coming at around 460 mark, and today the stock is trading very positive. From the bottom, it has managed to trade near to the high of the day. I would wait for the counter to cross 460. If you're already holding, keep the stop loss of day's low and keep the position open. By any chance the stock manages to cross 460 mark, expect the stock to reach around 525, 530.
Okay, let's take a view. Karthik is asking a question on Facebook about Shriram Transport Finance, and if you remember, around the end of September or so, along with the rest of the NBFCs, this particular stock had taken quite the beating. In fact, it had reached levels, from what I can see, of close to 940 or thereabouts. It's back to 1,180, 81 levels. He has bought at levels of 1,200. So the price is not too far from his acquisition price at this moment. Sharmila, I want to come to you on this counter. It's recovered from the lows that it saw, 940 or thereabouts, and it's close to his buy price. Does he hold on for the long term, do you think?
So answer this in three parts. I think the first part is, of course, why the stock corrected. It corrected because of that cross-holding loan that that they've given to a company which they sort of co-hold. So that was not received too well by the market, and which is why the stock really corrected. So that was one part, and I think that they gave an explanation, which in turn has sort of gotten absorbed by the market over these last 2-3 months. Then I think coming to the business, because they are in the business of financing second sale of commercial vehicles. But overall, we've seen a slowdown in that whole space. So probably it will get reflected on sort of a second sale also. But I think that will play out in the next couple of quarters. I think why we are seeing recovery on a lot of these stocks is also the fact that we are seeing a recovery in the entire financial, that NBFC sort of space, which took a big hit post all that whole blowout over these banking issues and ILFS and housing finance companies, etc. So that recovery is a recovery we are seeing across the entire space. So it's a stock I like, but perhaps with a sort of it's not absolutely it's a business model that I like, but perhaps you need your investment horizon to be like at least 12 to 18 months to stay invested in the stock.
Okay. All right. So that's the view not just on Shriram Transport Finance, and you saw from the chart that was displayed that it is a recovery in quite a few of those names in the NBFC space. Let's take a short-term query now. Upsal Satat is asking about Aksh Optifiber. Upsal got in at levels of 44 and is seeing quite a bit of a down tick on the investment. It's currently at 25 or thereabouts. What's the strategy here?
So that 45 mark would have come in the month of March or April when the stock was near to around 47, 48. And since then the stock is in clearly downtrend. Now because their holding is very old, I would say that the stock has taken a support of around 22 and the stock has managed to make the double bottom at that point of time. Nothing on charts as of now. The stock will clearly be in uptrend only about 28.5. But since you are holding the stock since long and the stock has managed to make double bottom, keep a stop loss, don't keep the stop loss, just hold the counter for time being. By any chance it goes about 28.5, buy equal quantity and average out at that point of time.
Okay, we've got a question from Praveen Dugar on two completely different entities, and I would assume that this is because he's interested in adding them in his portfolio. Sharmila, this one is for you. Long-term view on Tejas Networks and on Strides Pharma. How do you rate these two as part of a portfolio?
Very honestly, I don't track either of the two actively, but within those two, I think perhaps Strides Pharma, and for me that stock would be a hold.
Okay, then how about I pose this in a different way? If you were to consider the kind of areas that these two companies play in, and if you were to attribute that to a sort of an exposure in a portfolio, what names would you recommend?
So I think, very honestly, Tejas Network, that way it is in a sort of a niche sort of a business. There aren't too many players in that, and one of the reasons why I don't track it also too closely is that we are seeing a lot of disruption within that space. So you really don't know, what's happening with television, and online business channels such as yours, and so there's a lot that's happening there which perhaps is not fully understood, or you don't know how those dynamics are going to work out over the next couple of years. So I think if you had to pick within that space, then you should go with a company that has everything in terms of like a media house. Within that space, I like Z Entertainment. And Pharma, I think Strides Pharma is fairly decent, but I think the stock that I have been recommending is really Sun Pharma, which is of course going through a bad phase at this point in time. So if you don't want to really take that risk, then you could also look at Biocon.
Okay. Well, so Joby, alias, I'm really curious. Are you posing a trick question? Because from what I can say, Sri Leathers, the question that you have is a non-listed or an unlisted entity. I'm finding it as Sri Leathers Private Limited. All right, let's move on. We've got a technical question. Ridish Shah is asking for a view on PNB Gilts for 6 months. Let's pull up the chart and see where it's currently trading. PNB Gilts, remember, is an associate of PNB Bank, which deals with treasury operations. 32 or thereabouts is the price right now.
Correct. So for this entire year, this particular counter was trading below 200 days moving average. Just yesterday, this counter has managed to surpass 200 days moving average on the higher side. If you're already holding, fantastic, keep the stop loss of around 28.5. If you're not holding, wait for the counter to come back to 31.5 or 32. Add at that point of time and keep the target of around 40 on the higher side.
Okay, let's take Harshvardhan's query from Facebook. He's asking about Sterlite Technology and Siemens for the long term. What's the view here, Sharmila, on these two counters?
Well, both stocks are reasonable. Perhaps I prefer Siemens over Sterlite Technologies. And yes, I think we also mentioned some other company in that optic fiber space. But I think within that basket, probably I prefer Sterlite Technologies.
All right, that's fair enough. Can you also tell us about Bata? Because we've got a question from Shivakumar. He's asking for the long-term prospects of Bata. It's well, it's an interesting space, is it not?
Yes, and this whole footwear space has gotten interesting, especially after that that cut that we saw in GST over us. They changed the pricing band, and we've seen a whole lot of footwear companies really benefit from that. Whether it's a Relaxo, whether it's a Bata. So Bata again is a multinational, and I think it's not a story that's sort of only restricted to the footwear business, but it goes beyond that in terms of the real estate they own, etc. So I think it's a good stock, and definitely if you have a longer term horizon, this is something that you can hold on to.
All right. So, I like it when we get these new counters or other counters that we've not spoken about. Rajesh Pilani, apologies, that Bijlani. Rajesh Bijlani is asking a question about Nilkamal, which we haven't spoken about, Sharmila. From the perspective of, I think a lot of people buying that kind of furniture and those kind of products, just a shift from the traditional furniture and home appliances, if you may. What's the view here in terms of the long-term prospects that you see for this counter?
Definitely, I think a great outlook because, as you said, this sort of furniture has found a niche because, whether it's for outdoor use or office use or, places like that, we've seen that this kind of furniture has managed to make a good place for itself in Indian households or in our lifestyles. And I think that, the other reason why I prefer stocks like this is, also the fact that I'm not too... I've never really recommended real estate stocks per se, barring like a Godrej properties, simply because there have been a lot of issues that you don't understand, and I hope that with the implementation of RERA, etc., all these issues go away. But the fact being that the proxy play has thrown up names like this, whether it's a plywood company or something like a Nilkamal Plastics or a paint company or a housing finance company. So for me, definitely, I think in that mid-cap sort of basket, Nilkamal is a reasonable stock and you should continue to hold it.
Having said that, Rajesh has bought at levels of 1700 and the stock hasn't done particularly well this year, 19% lower thereabouts in the year-to-date period. He's asking whether he should consider averaging at the current level.
Perhaps you can take a technical view on averaging, because very honestly, it is like a 19% drawdown on a mid-cap stock, and given the way this year has played out for mid-caps, it's not a bad it's not bad at all because the stocks that have corrected 30-40%, which you continue to hold.
No,
so
fair
in terms
call.
of averaging, maybe you can take a technical view,
Fair
but
call.
I really think that it's a stock you can continue to hold.
All right, definitely. Why don't we do that then?
So, on Nilkamal, actually, since 1.5 years, the stock is trading in a broad range of around 1500 mark to 2000 mark. There were 3 trading opportunities which we could also capture nearby, near 1500 mark. Keep the stop loss of 100 points, that's around 1400, and whenever it reaches around 2000 mark, take an exit. Unless this stock is taking that channel out, either on the higher or on the lower side, there cannot be a new emergence of trend. So then only you can expect a new rally to emerge. Till then, keep trading that. So this is the best price to go long. Keep the stop loss of 1400 right now.
Okay. Raja Krishnappa Hanumappa is asking about the hotel industry picks. He's asking if Indian hotels make sense at current levels. Sharmila, what's the view here?
Yes, I would agree. I think that within the hotel space, that is the stock that I like. There are some which are sort of going through that whole CDR space, etc. But this is definitely a stock that I like. So yes, I think, and again, this is the best quarter for a lot of these, for the hotel companies and travel as a whole. So yes, I think that's a good stock within that space.
Okay, so very interesting question, strategy point of view, right? Shankar Azmira is asking for an entry point for HDFC Bank and HDFC for investment purposes. would you even suggest an entry point, or would you say that these are the perfect examples of stocks that you should buy over a period of time through an SIP route?
Absolutely, I completely agree with you on that, because I think that an SIP route is the best route to approach a lot of stocks just now, not just an HDFC and an HDFC bank. And definitely, I think if you're looking at a portfolio approach and you're looking at making an investment, I think HDFC is a great stock to hold in your portfolio. And you do get these dips because there are most of the sort of their shareholders have big quantities, and when a big quantity exchanges hands or is about to exchange hands, you do get these drawdowns. So make use of those and buy in small quantities. But yes, I completely agree with you. An SIP approach works best for both HDFC and HDFC Bank.
Okay, short-term query from Shubhendu Malik. Shubhendu is asking about Star Cements and is asking for a short-term view. What do you see?
So again, this stock is in consolidation of around 95 to 110. So as of now, because it's near to 110, I would say if you have the holding, then definitely you should go short. Keep the stop loss of 110. By any chance the stock manages to go above 110, go long. Otherwise, expect the counter again to reach to 95.
Okay, so that's Kunal's view on Star Cements. Last 6 months, it's down about 17%. But like Sharmila said, don't be too alarmed about something like that. You've seen correction broad-based. Sharmila, we've got a question from Vivek Kanodia. He's asking for a fundamental view on a couple of stocks. CDSL is one, and the other is HDFC Standard Life. He's saying that his holding period is 10 years, which is quite healthy if you think about it. Should he add at current levels?
Well, as a stock, I'm not too fond of CDSL, but I think with a 10-year horizon, it's fine, because, I think that they're sort of beyond a point, it's not going to be a business that can really grow very substantially. Once everything gets dematted, etc., then, you're really looking at a steady fee-based sort of an income. But yes, it will grow slowly. I think HDFC Standard Life has the potential to grow sort of faster, again in a very sort of steady manner, but it has the potential to grow its book better. So within the two, I prefer that. But yes, I think if you have that 10-year kind of horizon, why not? I think both are reasonable stocks.
Okay, we spoke about HDFC Bank. Let's sort of complete the picture and speak about the other private sector banks as well. We've got a question from Sudarshan, and I'm going to take the liberty, Sudarshan, of adding one more stock to your, or a couple of more stocks to your list. You're asking specifically about IndusInd Bank and ICICI, whether these two make sense at the current level. IndusInd particularly has seen significant correction, as you know, over the last couple of months. If you can in fact pull up the last 3 to 6 months and see the kind of correction that the stock has taken, it would perhaps give a better clarity. Sharmila, I'm going to expand this. So there you have it, 3 months, 14% correction in IndusInd Bank. But I'm going to expand this to also perhaps talk about Axis Bank and RBL Bank. What would you recommend from the private banking basket as of now?
So that's a really interesting question, because I think that here again there are sort of two parts. On the one part, you have these, everybody went through sort of a period of trouble for whatever reasons. You had ICICI Bank, which faced certain issues, Axis Bank, which had its own issues. Now Yes Bank is going through that phase, and we've seen that once the issues at Axis and ICICI have gotten settled, we've seen a good sort of a price run up. And again, I think you've seen a general correction on the entire banking space, and private banking or corporate banks, as they are called, have not really, they've also been part of that correction. So having said all that, I think that if you want to buy a risky bank at this point in time and this price point, where there could be a little bit more price erosion, then I think Yes Bank is a good bank to look at. And I think if you're on you want to play slightly safer, then obviously go for an HDFC Bank. IndusInd Bank also is a bank that I like, especially because earnings have been on a strong wicket. I think RBL has also been a bank which a lot of people have sort of liked over this last year and a half. So you have, I think, a fairly good amount of banking stocks that you can look at.
Right. Well, it's that time of the show where we slip into the rapid fire segment. That, remember, is where we try and scrunch up as many questions as possible in the span of 2 minutes. Just a shout out to the experts to remind them to keep their answers as short as possible. This first one is for you, Sharmila. Is this a good time? This is Adit's question. Is this a good time to buy Pfizer and or Sanofi India?
Yes, I think what we've Pharma have gotten a preference over, the domestic pharma play simply because of the issues domestic pharma has had, with USFDA, etc. MNC pharma are perceived to be better. I think within the two, between the two, I prefer Sanofi, but as a disclosure, I own both.
Okay, PNB, let's quickly pull up the chart and see what it's trading right now. Shubhendu is asking for an entry price, but of course you can tell him not to buy it if you
honestly, the formations are very strong. The trigger price would be around 74. It would be a swing trade above 74. Expect the stock to reach around 80 and keep the stop loss of 72 then.
Okay. Sharmila, Chetan's got a question for you. Between Suven Life Sciences and Cadila Healthcare, which one would you choose?
I think Cadila Healthcare. That would be my preferred play. I mean, it's very honestly, both these stocks I don't track too much, but I prefer Cadila between these two. I prefer Cadila over Suven Life Sciences.
Okay, Gaurav Pandit is asking for a view on the Nifty for the short term.
So the consolidation which we are witnessing on the daily, on the intraday chart of the day. So keep the trigger point of 10,820 and on the lower side 10,760. Above that level or below that level, a trend may emerge.
Okay. Well, this show wouldn't be complete without a question on BEML. So we've got a question on BEML that was bought at 707. What would you do for the next 3 to 6 months?
Fantastic daily chart formation, cup and handle formation, trend reversal probably on cards. Wait for the closing of the day to be near to high. If that happens, keep the target of around 910, 920.
Another one for you. India Bulls Housing Finance bought at 790 intraday. What are the targets?
Intraday targets for that would be say around 820 max.
Okay. All right, let's pull up another one. Federal Mogul. What's the view here, Sharmila? Now, I can't expect that you know about this because Mayank Saraf is... Mayank, you do a lot of research yourself. You should actually give us the links if you can. SEBI's website says it's under examination. But what's your view broadly on Federal Mogul?
So Federal Mogul Beats is, I think, an auto ancillary, if I'm not mistaken. But again, it's not a company that I've tracked too closely. So I really wouldn't want to comment on this.
All right. Well, on that note, let me thank both our guests. Thanks so much, Sharmila and Kunal, for helping our viewers out today. And thank you all for joining us on this edition of AskPQ. Remember, you can log on to the website bloombergquint.com and search for the hashtag AskPQ. And you can find all the answers that were discussed on today's show. Up next on Bloomberg Quint is Power Lunch. Do stay tuned.